to the Let's Talk Leadership Live podcast at AI Tech North. We're discussing leading innovation today, which is super exciting. We're so happy to be here. Sandra and myself started our podcast over 6 months ago in order to help inspire the next generation of tech leaders. Since then, we've interviewed some awesome leaders from across the globe, and it's been one hell of a journey, hasn't it, Sandra?
It sure has.
So today, actually, it's our first live session. So we're super happy to be joined by some of the North's greatest tech leaders. We have Russel Collingham, who is the head of technology at Hedgehog Labs, who are ranked #1 mobile app developers globally. We've got Cate Kalson, who's the director of data strategy at Wyman, who are a global leader in management consultancy. And we've got Neil Dunlop, who is the tech director at Infintiy Works, who are a consultancy unlocking the value of the next industrial revolution. And we're super happy because Neil's making a second appearance on our podcast. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. How are you doing?
Hi, nice to see you all, guys.
Hi.
So first of all, thank you very much for all three of you taking, for our lovely speakers, taking time out of your day. I know you've all got busy schedules. What we'd like to do initially is if you could each start by introducing yourselves and just give us a little bit of background with regards to your responsibilities. So Neil, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. So, hi guys, I'm Neil Dunlop. I'm the tech director of Infintiy Works. I make sure that we make best use of technology to solve our customers' problems and make sure we deliver on our promises, essentially.
Fantastic. Russell?
Very similar to Neil, actually. So I'm head of technology at Hedgehog Lab. I run a team of about 20, mixture of developers, architects, DevOps engineers, QA team. And we work, as an agency, we work on about 10 to 12 projects concurrently at any one time. And I manage the technical resources that are involved in those projects. I also work a lot with the sales team on the pre-sales, engaging with potential clients to work out what they need from a technical perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Cate? Have we lost Cate?
This is a great thing about when you do a live podcast. So we might just have to come back to Cate.
We'll come back. Yeah, we'll come back to Cate. So for those that are listening in at the moment, so Elly and I have prepared some lovely questions for our amazing speakers. So we'll go through a few questions, but in the meantime, there should be a chat pane that you can use to ask some questions. We'd love to be able to have some live questions to answer once we've gone through a few questions that we've pre-prepared. So first question, how can we all prepare for the future as leaders? And I shall ask that first one to Russell, please.
Well, as a technical leader, I'm kind of an expert in no area and knowledgeable in all areas, but it's impossible to keep on top of everything. So one of the things I do to cheat is I try and hire experts in those areas.
Good idea.
So I don't. It's impossible to keep up with all the latest iOS releases, or the latest Android releases, or the great latest web frameworks that you should be using, or the cloud technologies and the new Amazon's got hundreds of services, all with 3-letter acronyms that you don't know what they are. You can't keep on top of all of these things. So I try and make sure that I hire good people, work with a team, and empower them to keep up with that knowledge. So I want to work with Android developers as part of my team who know what Google are going to announce before Google know it. So that's how they keep me informed with what's coming ahead, really.
Fantastic. Apologies, Cate. We've now got Cate back. Cate, we just, if you don't mind, just doing a little introduction about yourself and your responsibilities, and then we'll go back to the questions.
Sure. Sorry about that. I don't know. I think my Wi-Fi is not playing nicely.
Okay.
Yeah, I work for Wyman, and I lead our specialist data and analytics team in the UK. So we have 30 people based in Newcastle and in London. And we support our kind of client teams that are typically more industry oriented with specialist data analytics skills.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Brilliant. So, so we were just, Russell very nicely answered our first question, which was discussing around how we prepare for the future as leaders. So if we go back over to, I guess, Neil, to see what your view is on this topic.
Sure. Thanks, Sandra. I think to echo a lot of what Russell's already said, I think you have to be open-minded. You have to be prepared for change. Everything is going to change. You're never going to be able to master everything. You can definitely hire great people that have some deeper technical knowledge or process knowledge than you do. But I think the current situation has really highlighted how fast things can change. We all held on to a bunch of beliefs about how the world worked, how business worked, and that was tipped on its head in the space of 3 months, essentially. So I think learning to embrace that change and accept that you're not going to nail everything down, and being flexible is really, really important. And getting your teams aligned to that fact of the world is going to change. It's going to keep on moving, and they shouldn't be too concerned about it. They just need to embrace that change and keep a broad mind and keep learning new things. Mostly, I mean, listening, essentially, to take the pulse of the world and see what other people are doing. We all have a habit of I guess, in our positions of talking a lot and sharing our opinions. We kind of get paid to share our opinions, but there's an awful lot of value in stopping and listening and seeing what other people are saying, and distilling that down and making a plan of attack from there, really. So, it's that classic thing of listening more than you speak, essentially. He says talking.
Fantastic. Anything
I'd
else?
agree. I was just going to say no two clients are the same. So exactly what Neil says, be open-minded. So a new client comes along, you don't try and pigeonhole them into one solution. Look around for innovation. So we recently worked with a client in the Caribbean.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know any payment providers that supported the islands in the Caribbean. So we had to do some research. We found a few local ones. We found a few global ones like PayPal and WorldPay, but we also found some local ones that we'd never heard of before. So it was a case of trying to innovate on the fly, work out, spend some time researching with my architecture team and solutions team to try and come up with those ideas. And I absolutely agree with Neil. Be open-minded and look for new solutions to help you.
Fantastic. It's all about the people, isn't it? And having the right people behind you, and like you say, listening in order to develop those people. We can't all be experts at everything, can we? I completely agree. Kate, over to you. Sorry, do you want me to repeat the question? Because I know you've kind of been in and out a little bit, struggling with connection.
I think it's okay. I think I have heard a lot of the same things that I tend to say, which is around listening. And I think the only additional thing I would say is that it's trying to actively seek people that are going to have a different perspective than you. So it's really trying to avoid that bubble thinking. And as Russell said, that comes, I think, very naturally when you work with different clients, because they kind of force us to not be allowed to have that perspective. But you can still kind of get into it internally. So I think the more you can try to kind of use diverse perspectives.
Fantastic. So on that point, obviously we're talking about the people and what we can do as future leaders. It'd be really great to understand from the speakers what you feel is the best way to inspire innovation within your teams.
After you, Russell, go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually, a lot that I initially came to Hedgehog Labs as a contract developer, and got flipped into a permie. One of the things that inspired me to join the company was the innovation from the design and product teams. I guess that's not a technical answer because it doesn't come from the developers. It comes from for us, it's all about the solution, not just what the technical team does. And we get our design teams and our product teams and our user research teams to innovate with the client. And I'd never really worked with such a great team, and I was inspired by them to want to join the company. So it doesn't necessarily come from my team as the developers. It comes from the other parts of the company that fit together to give you a great solution, which we can enjoy building as developers.
Fantastic, great example. Over to you,
Yeah.
Neil.
Yeah, and I think specifically as a leader, what you can do is, I think you should strive to kind of set an expectation of an outcome rather than an output. So we need to look at what we're trying to achieve, and you need to be clear about that with your team or teams, and then essentially back off, get out of the way, give them space to innovate, give them space to figure out how to solve that challenge. So you set the challenge, but you let them figure out how do we do that. They'll probably have better ideas than you will. If you kind of are prescriptive about how they solve a challenge, you're kind of starting to build this learned helplessness that the people do exactly as they're told. And it might go quickly at the start, you might get the result you ask for, but at some point you'll run out of ideas yourself. You are for a finite solution, you're looking for a creative thinking, and they have to kind of exercise that muscle a little bit. So it has to be okay to fail as well. It has to be okay to get it wrong and take a few detours. And as long as everyone's shooting for the same outcome, you might go there in a totally different route than what you expected. And that's what your team are for. Let them do it. So set the expectation and get out of the way is the big one for me.
I agree. I don't have time to stay on a project. These guys are doing it full time. I have half an hour to pop in, frame what the problem is, help if they need help, but then let them run with it and have lots of failures and then come up with an outcome. That's a really good point. I like what Cate said as well. We have the phrase in our company about in relation to what Cate said about not bringing in people who are always the same thinking. We call it bringing in some extra DNA, some external DNA, some fresh DNA into the company. So if you're all a Microsoft stack company, bring somebody else who's different. It gives you a different perspective.
I love that, the mention of fresh DNA and just in general different thinking, that creative thinking that Neil said is going to inspire diversity in your teams, which is fantastic. Now, also
using cross-skilled teams as well, I think is important.
Yeah.
So don't just have all the technical team in. Throw design in there. Throw product in there. Throw some of the QA team in there, for example. Just have that mixed skill set team to help come up with solutions.
100%, definitely. Now, as a recruiter at heart, and this is something that I often get asked, but how do you think skills in tech will need to change, prepare, I guess, adapt for the future ahead of us? So, Neil, you've got aggressive growth plans at Infintiy Works. You've scaled up beyond belief in the years that we've known you. So I'd love to know your take on this.
I think the skills that we will require of our teams will definitely change. And I think they'll become more generalist. I think it'll be a little bit of specialist skills, but a lot more generalist. So as technology gets a bit more commoditized and some of the complicated things get easier to do, I think we're going to start to place an emphasis on the human skills, the thinking and the decision making and the creativity, and the being able to distill a load of options down to the most effective choice. And I think it's those things that will make a real difference. The technical skills are still really, really important, but being that focused on one piece of tech for your entire career, I think that'll move away a little bit, and we'll start to see people who have a very broad set of skills. And the thing that differentiates them is the way they think about things. So, AI is becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and things are getting much more commoditized. So focus on the human skills that only a human can do, that you as a human being can really get good at. And I think that is the decision making, the creativity stuff.
I love that. I think particularly we focus a lot on diversity and inclusion and bringing in the next range of tech talent into our market and into our industry. So I think by being able to, by someone like yourself promoting that it's not just a technology that you need to learn, it's an approach, it's a way of thinking. There's so many people that can then move across into tech, which is fantastic, because that's what we all need, right? Great talent within our market. What about yourself, Russell? What do you think about how we can prepare?
It's a really good point from Neil. So I did my PhD in AI 25 years ago, and then I taught at the university. AI was a very different landscape.
On the stage with us.
AI was a very different landscape then. It was all about people obsessing how to get from 70% accuracy to 70.1% accuracy. And the key shift now is that AI is almost a solved problem for a lot of the underlying tech. Speech rec, we don't think about it. Image recognition, we don't think about it. There's off-the-shelf APIs you can do. I compose an email in Google, and suddenly it's predicting what I'm going to write. I just have to say, oh, yeah, that's the right answer. I'll hit tab, and it fills in a whole sentence for me. The challenge now is, like Neil says, it's not about obsessing about those individual parts of AI or parts of tech. It's how can we use them and how can we turn them into great products and great solutions. And the fact that Google just slipped in this predicted text into emails blew my mind when I first saw it. I was just, wow, this is incredible, you know? Absolutely, absolutely incredible. And that's what it's all about now, is using innovation, products. How can we make great products out of this?
That's fantastic. Now, with your current teams then, how do you ensure you and your team's skill sets are remaining relevant and up to date? And how can we encourage this as leaders?
I think you've got to take a mix of approaches, really. So it's got to be some formal training. You know, sometimes certification and formal training is the way that works for the individual. Some people like structured approach. Other people want more informal training. But I think the big thing really is giving people an opportunity that once they've started to learn a tool or a technique or something that's important to them, is give them an opportunity to practice that thing, to try it out for real. And give them a safety net to get it wrong as well. You know, you've got to start to put those skills into real use at some point. That's quite scary. You know, if you want people to step up and stretch themselves, they need a safety net around it. You know, somebody's got to say, "Well, give it a go. You know, what's the worst that could happen? We'll make sure that there isn't any negative consequence for us or the client or for yourself." So you've got to keep giving people those opportunities to try new things out. Otherwise, they will get a bit bored and they will get a bit fed up. So I think almost again, it's giving them space to try things, giving them some structured support, but they've got to have a desire inside them to learn new things as well. So keep challenging people and saying, what more do you want to do with your career? What would you like to learn? Do you think that's aiming high enough? You know, and are you taking all the right steps to get you to the right place? We'll keep feeding in the opportunities. You've got to keep taking the steps with us. So yeah, I think giving them opportunities is the bottom line for me.
I love what you mentioned there about keep challenging your workforce. It's just so important, isn't it? Russell, what about what do you get up to at Hedgehog Labs to ensure that?
So you've met Sarat. One of the challenges we have.
We loved Sarat. He came on the podcast. He was hilarious.
Yeah.
Such a great
One of the
leader.
challenges we have is that the CEO is always selling things before we've had time to play with them. So you know, it's trying to think of an example. Let's say when Face ID or Touch ID came out on the iPhone, he'd already sold it to a whole load of customers. We'd never had a chance to play with the APIs. So that was a big problem. That was a big problem for me. So one of the things that I've introduced into Hedgehog Lab is the concept of having hack days. So we don't do it as a company wide, we do it as a platform. So the iOS team gets together for a day of projects. I was going to say we'd put them in a room and lock the door, but everybody's remote still at the moment. Put them into a virtual room and let them innovate and play with some of the new tech that comes out. Because working as an agency, it's quite fast paced. Clients want this, clients want that. You don't get time to step back and play with new stuff. So how the hell do we know how long it's going to take when there's that ticket on the Jira board and says in Sprint 4 implement Face ID and we've never even played with it? We don't know if it's going to take 1 day or 5 weeks. So let's have a play. So have hack days together as an iOS team, play with some of the new cool stuff that comes out, AR, VR, whatever, and learn about it, write some blog posts, do some videos so that the commercial team know how to sell it, what they can sell. So that's what we're trying to do. So not on a whole company basis, just on a platform basis. So let the Android guys sit together and play for a day or two. Let the iOS guys sit and play together and play with some of the new stuff and learn it and understand what its limits are and how we can use it in our projects in the future. And then that can feed back into the sales team to use it as a commercial opportunities.
Perfect. Just before, actually, sorry, Sandra, just before we go into some more questions, it'd be great if any of the listeners have got any questions. We are doing a live Q&A, so hopefully at some point, we're live at the moment, so we'll see, but hopefully it should come up on our screen, all the questions that you're asking. So feel free to pop in some questions direct, and we'll try and get through some of those for you today.
Fantastic. Absolutely love that idea, Russell. I think that's great. And it should obviously help you retain and attract talent longer term, because it sounds like it's a really cool, exciting idea for the guys to, obviously, as you said,
hands-on.
Yeah, definitely.
Hands-on.
And bringing the teams together as well, like real team spirit. And, you know, it sounds like you're bringing those people along with you on the journey that you're taking as a business, which is fantastic. Brilliant. So what can we do as, obviously our community, hence why we're here, AI Tech North, the tech community in the North is absolutely fantastic. What can we do, in your view, to ensure that sustainable talent is available and continue to be available within technology? And Neil, I'll let you go for that one first.
Thanks. I think it's two things probably is sharing more, which is really hard in the current situation. But I think in the North there's a really great scene of meetups and events and us sharing information, sharing knowledge, and sharing our skills with each other and skilling each other up. There's a great network of ways of getting people who are new to tech into the discipline. Things like Code Up are a great idea. And we invest, it takes time and it takes money to do it, but ultimately we'll all reap the rewards. So things like our academy scheme is going from strength to strength and taking some huge intakes this year. We work on a thing called generation.org with partners to train people up from disadvantaged backgrounds in data skills. I think we all have to accept that if we want a strong, vibrant community, we've got to spend some time and some money on this essentially. And bring people in from lots of different backgrounds, because they'll add something to the community and to our discipline, and we will all learn new things and we'll get different perspectives, and it will drive innovation and it'll drive a richness in thinking. Everybody has that capability in them, and if we give them a chance and a kickstart, who knows where the next leader comes from, who knows where the next brilliant genius comes from. If we all spend some time investing in that, we'll all reap a reward and a benefit out of that.
Definitely.
100%. Neil, Cate? Sorry, Russell, Cate. Anything else you'd like to add?
I was going to say I'm a big advocate of universities. So we've got 5 great universities within about 30 to 40 minutes drive of us. And I like to give time back to them to tell them what goes on in industry. So being taught a university course is very different sometimes to the real world. Have they ever used Git? Which company doesn't use Git? They don't use it in universities. That's a simple one. But tell them what it's like in a real in a real business compared to university. Give them an insight. So I have input into the content of the courses, have input into projects, do mentoring, give careers talks. I was on with a guy at Durham for half an hour this morning talking about his future career with him. He's a final year student. He didn't know what he should be doing, what kind of things happen in the workplace, what would be good for his career. Should he do a master's? Should he do a PhD? That kind of thing. That I find that as a great way. We've all been in that position. I find it as a great way to give back a little bit and help prepare people and guide them a little bit.
Fantastic.
That's a big thing I like to do.
Yeah, interesting. Cate, we've got you back.
Yep. I've like 2 options. I've been like running around my house trying to find a different. I don't know what was happening, but it just kept kicking me out. So probably one of these guys could answer that question.
Well, you're here now.
I'm here now. No, I think, for me, it's around working really collaboratively in that skill space in the ecosystem where you are. In the northeast, Newcastle, kind of at the centre of where we focus our talent programmes. There's a fantastic kind of community of people who are pretty well organised. Organisation that I'm involved with, Dynamo Northeast. They, really try to put together people from the private sector to interact with universities, as Russell was saying, but also drive quite fantastic initiatives. There's a new high school that's launched in Newcastle that's focused very specifically on technical skills. These things take a long time to pay back. They're never going to be like immediate. Next year we can see a complete step change in types of talents available. So we all have to work, I think, collaboratively on what are those investments we're going to make broadly. And what I've also found is the public sector is getting better at engaging with this as well. So, the kind of combined authorities, particularly the metropolitan kind of regions, really understand that technology has been the driver of economic growth in the last 5-10 years, and they want to kind of be competitive as regions. So I think the more you can engage with them, drive those programs, they want to listen to the tech community to understand how to kind of really make progress. So I think if you're not involved in that and you're interested in that space, find out which organisations there are near you that you can get involved with and really make a difference.
It's fantastic. One thing for me as a podcast host, we've been doing this over 6 months now, but leadership's been a journey for me, and I've learned so much from all the amazing guests that we've had on the pod. But we all know leadership can be very challenging. I'd love to know what's the best bit of leadership advice you've ever received. Let's start with Cate while we've got you.
I think you've got me now. I think that one thing that has been kind of really useful for me actually recently is someone said to me, don't let leadership be lonely. And I think that it can feel like that because you're often, wanting to put on kind of the brave face. People are looking to you for a sense of security and calm and kind of, coming up with the plan, all of that kind of stuff, which in itself can be a big drop.
Oh gosh, no.
Really figuring out who you can then be kind of honest with is important. And there's always someone else. Maybe it's a peer, maybe it's someone from a different team, where you can really go to and say, I'm stuck on this and it's worrying me. And don't feel like you have to do things by yourself. And that's a really good piece of advice.
100%.
That's really great.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to meet some of your leadership team, senior leadership team at Oliver Wyman. You've got some great people to network with and help support you with that. What about yourself, Neil? What advice have you got for people who are finding leadership particularly challenging?
It's an infuriating, simple question, really. And the person that imparts this to me regularly will be laughing now, but I'm going to have to give them credit to it. And it's a simple question of what's the problem we're solving. So when you're in the middle of doing something, we all have an ego, we all have our preferences, and you can get very wedded to the way of doing something. You can get very wedded to my approach or my opinion. And often I find that when it's getting a bit heated and somebody will say, well, what's the problem we're solving here? Take it back to what's the challenge, what's the outcome we'd like to achieve. It reframes your thinking and you think, well, I'm arguing over whether my way is the right way versus a different person's different way. We're arguing over the wrong thing. We should be focused on what we're trying to achieve, and that will allow you to think a bit more creatively about how you do it. So we often argue about how, and we should be thinking about what are we trying to get to. So asking that question in the middle of a conversation is quite useful to make everyone kind of stop and reset, and park all of that ego and park all of that defensiveness, and really focus on what's of benefit to the company or the customer or the project you're working on, because we all want to achieve a positive outcome, whatever we're doing, and it forces you to think a bit more creativity. So that one, much as I would hate to give credit to that particular phrase, because it drives me mad when I'm in the middle of a conversation. But yeah, what the problem we're solving here is often the very big one for me.
Awesome. What about you, Russell? Share your words of wisdom.
Two little nuggets. One was passed down to me, and one which I live by as well. So the one that was passed down to me was don't be afraid to make hard decisions. And as a leader, that may involve letting people go. It may involve stopping what you're doing and redoing it in a better way. It may involve a hard conversation you've got to have with a client. But don't be afraid to make those hard decisions and make them as early as possible. If you've got to make them, don't let them linger. Things feel a lot better after you've made that decision and acted upon it. And from a personal point of view is don't settle for average, whether that be hiring the right people or in what you're building for a client. Don't build something mediocre, because for your client, it's the thing that they believe in. So they want you to believe in it as well. So don't settle for average, and don't be afraid to make hard decisions.
That's fantastic. And I think that growth mindset that you've got there shows a lot of the successes I'm sure that you guys are having at Hedgehog Lab. I'd love to know if there's any leadership training or books that you would really recommend. So Cate, let's start with you. What have you got any recommendations for us or for the viewers?
So I think for me it's anything which is really around like different personality types and that builds on people's kind of self-awareness of different preferences. I've been quite surprised because I came through kind of a consulting or human-focused strategy consulting background. Then I kind of moved to tech. So I was exposed to kind of thinking around different personality preferences very early. And it surprises me how people with 20 years experience in tech sometimes have never really had a kind of exposure to this concept of like not everyone thinks like you. And to your points around earlier around, in the heated debate about how to do something, some of the challenges, you've got two different styles. You've got someone who's very much more introverted, who wants to prepare, versus someone who likes to talk out loud, or you've got someone who sees things very much as they are and someone else who thinks very conceptually. So I found that this has really unlocked some people in our team who maybe have struggled or have found it hard to move through conflict, really, really help them. There's various different versions of it. Myers-Briggs is a classic. Insights Discovery is an organisation that we work with a lot. Oliver Wyman has a good kind of framework for sort of diagnosing yourself and understanding yourself, and then moving more to kind of how you interact with others and how you teams. So for me, I think that's a hugely valuable kind of way of thinking that can really change how you with any other human in life, personal life, professional life. And yeah, I really recommend getting a bit geeky about personality type.
Love that. Perfect. Neil, Russell, any other top tips or recommendations?
I'd have to agree with Cate there. I think everyone has to go on that journey at some point of, do you understand yourself and do you understand why you do what you do?
Yeah.
A bit of an eye opener sometimes when you have yourself played back in a mirror. Oh God, do I really do that? I'm sure we've talked previously that I'm a massive bookworm, so I've always got books I'd recommend. If you're looking at kind of stepping up to lead a team, particularly a technical team, I'd look at the Manager's Path by Camille Fournier. If you're taking the next step, The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker is really great, and you don't have to be an exec to read it. You can be an exec of yourself. So there's a lot about time and energy management and where you put your focus. And as you move on in your career, you tend to get overwhelmed by the amount of work that you've got to do. So you can pick. You need to pick what you're going to spend your time on. It's always a big one for me. And then I guess one a bit further on for kind of growing your organization and thinking about how you grow your organization and empower other people is just a book called Grow by Sandy Ogg, which is really, really good. It helps you think a bit bigger about how do I design bits of the organization for it to be really, really effective and empower other people start to grow themselves. It's kind of a bit of a culture of innovation at the forefront. We don't want to just go through the motions. We want to think differently, and we want to think about innovation, and we want to think about how we get that to run all the way through the business.
Yeah.
So they would be my big three at the moment. I've read a couple of them a couple of times, and Grow is on the bedside cabinet at the moment. So
fantastic. Russell, we've just got we haven't got much time left till the next session, so you've got about 10 seconds if you can give us your tip or recommendation. And
so to pick up on what Cate said earlier, knowing that you're not alone as a leader is important. So not a book recommendation, a couple of free mailing lists, Level Up and CTO Craft are excellent to know that other people have the same problems that you have.
Great.
And they aggregate a lot of articles and links to really help you on a weekly basis.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to have your top tips on that one. And also, I guess, from our podcast, Neil's been on our podcast before. We've had plenty of speakers. We've had speakers before from Oliver Wyman and Hedgehog Labs. So please do feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, Transition Partners. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So it's the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. And we've also got another podcast called The Journey of a Woman in Tech. If you are interested in finding out more about female leaders within our industry, that would be fantastic. So please do take a listen. If anyone's got any questions or follow up today, please do get in touch with myself and Sandra on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to answer your questions. But want to say huge thank you to our fantastic guests. I know we had a couple of technical issues with Cate, but yeah, thank you so much, Cate, Neil, and Russell for your time.
Thanks, guys.
It's been fantastic.
It's been great, really interesting. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.